The emergency transmission arrived at Luna Station at 600 hours, and it changed everything. Commander Jake stood in the communications center, watching the holographic display flicker to life. The being on the screen was unlike anything he had seen before. Tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights of whatever ship it was broadcasting from. Its eyes were large and dark, filled with something Jake recognized immediately despite the alien features. Fear. "I am ambassador of the people," the alien said, its voice translated by the station's computer. "We come to you in desperate need. Our worlds are dying, our people are being consumed, we have nowhere else to turn." Jake leaned forward, his hand already moving to record the message. "This is Luna Station. We're receiving you, Ambassador. What's happening?" The ambassador's image shifted, replaced by scenes of destruction. Entire planets covered in writhing black masses, cities crumbling, ships exploding in silent fury against the backdrop of space. Jake felt his stomach tighten. "The swarm," continued. "They have destroyed 12 of our colony worlds in the past year. They consume everything, metal, organic matter, even the atmosphere itself. They leave nothing behind but dead rock. Our fleets cannot stop them. The Galactic Council debates while my people die." Jake watched the footage in silence. He had heard rumors of the whispers from the few alien traders who visited Earth's outer colonies, a species that treated entire civilizations like food. Most humans dismissed it as exaggerated stories meant to scare newcomers to galactic politics. "Why come to us?" Jake asked. "Earth is barely part of the galactic community. We've only had faster-than-light travel for 20 years. His face reappeared on the screen. "Because the Council calls your world they say humans are survivors from a planet that should not produce intelligent life. They say you fight wars with a ferocity that frightens them. They say humans do not know when to surrender." The ambassador paused. "We need people who do not surrender. We need you." Jake felt the weight of those words. "I need to forward this to Earth Command. Stand by, Ambassador." "We do not have much time," said quietly. "The swarm will reach prime in 3 months. After that, my species will exist only in memory." The transmission ended. Jake stood alone in the communications center, staring at the empty holographic display. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, safe in her school. He thought about the billions of humans who went about their daily lives with no idea that somewhere in the galaxy, an entire species was facing extinction. He sent the message to Earth. 6 hours later, Admiral Helen Carter sat in the command center of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters in Geneva. Around the table sat the leaders of Earth's military branches, representatives from the major nations, and scientific advisors. They had all watched the transmission twice. "We're being asked to fight an enemy that has destroyed civilizations thousands of years older than ours," said General Victor Hayes, his weathered face grave. "With technology they consider primitive. This is madness." "It's also the right thing to do," replied Dr. Rachel, the civilian scientific advisor. "We can't just ignore a call for help." "Can't we?" Hayes shot back. "Our responsibility is to Earth and her colonies, not to aliens we barely know." Admiral Carter raised her hand, and the room fell silent. She was a tall woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen 3 wars. "The question isn't whether we can help. The question is whether we should. Lieutenant Blake, show them the analysis." A young officer stood up. Lieutenant Sophie Blake was fresh out of the academy, but her tactical mind was sharp. She activated the holographic display, showing the spread of the swarm across the galaxy. "The swarm is expanding," Sophie said, highlighting the affected regions. 12 systems gone in 1 year. At this rate, they'll consume the entire sector within a decade. That includes the trade routes to our outer colonies. She zoomed in. "If the fall, the swarm will have a clear path to 30 more inhabited worlds. Eventually, they'll reach us." The room went quiet. "So this isn't charity," said Admiral Carter. "This is strategic defense. We stop them there or we fight them at our doorstep later." "Even if we go," Hayes said, "what can we do that they can't? They have ships powered by quantum reactors. We're still using fusion drives and kinetic weapons." Sophie pulled up another display. "Actually, sir, that might be our advantage. They adapt to threats through biological evolution. Every species that's fought them used similar tactics and technology. Standard galactic doctrine. Energy weapons, defensive formations, wars of attrition." She paused. "We don't fight like that. We never have." Doctor nodded. Humans learned warfare on Earth, against each other, in every environment imaginable. Jungle, desert, ocean, mountains, even urban combat. We innovate constantly because we had to. They have never faced an enemy like us. You're proposing we go to war based on being unpredictable? Hayes asked. I'm proposing we go because it's right, Admiral Carter said firmly. But yes, our unpredictability gives us a chance. They expect their enemies to act logically by galactic military standards. Humans rarely do that. We take risks. We improvise. We fight dirty when we have to. She stood up, placing her hands on the table. I've read the reports on human military history. We've won battles we had no business winning. Outnumbered, but refusing to quit. That's what they need. Not superior technology. They need someone too stubborn to give up. The debate continued for another hour. Some argued for neutrality. Others worried about the cost in human lives. But Admiral Carter's words had struck a chord. Humanity had always been a species that fought for the underdog, that stood up to bullies even when it meant taking a beating. Finally, the vote was called. It was close, but the decision was made. Earth would answer the call. Admiral Carter immediately began issuing orders. Every shipyard in the solar system was to begin preparations. Every available warship was to be for departure. Volunteers were called for, and the response was overwhelming. Thousands of men and women stepped forward, knowing they might not return. Commander Jake received his orders at Luna Station. He was to report to the UES Valiant, one of Earth's carriers. He packed his few belongings and recorded a message for his daughter. Hey, sweetheart, he said to the camera. Dad's got to go away for a while. There are people out there who need help, and I'm going to make sure they get it. I love you. Be good for your mom. He sent the message, then headed to the docking bay. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out. Families said goodbye. Engineers worked around the clock. Supply ships ammunition, food, medical supplies, and spare parts to the assembling fleet. Earth had never mobilized like this before, not even during the colony wars. On the observation deck of the Valiant, Captain Mitchell watched ships arrive from Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. Destroyers, frigates, carriers, even converted civilian vessels. They came together, forming humanity's answer to this plea. His second officer, Commander Kate, stood beside him. Think we can actually do this? She asked. Thought about the footage of the destroying worlds. He thought about the fear in Ambassador's eyes. He thought about what it meant to be human, to look at impossible odds and move forward anyway. We're about to find out, he said. 3 days later, the fleet was ready. 47 warships, 23 support vessels, and 12 hospital ships. It wasn't the largest fleet ever assembled, but it was everything humanity could spare. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the Valiant, looking at the assembled ships on the displays. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. To all ships and crew, she began. We are about to embark on a mission that will define how the galaxy sees humanity for generations to come. We go not as conquerors, we go as defenders, not to take, but to give. They asked for help and we answered. Some of you will not come home, some of you will be injured, all of you will be tested. But I believe in every single person in this fleet. We are humanity. We do not abandon those in need. We do not surrender in the face of evil. We fight and we endure and we protect. Today we show the galaxy who we are. The fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives in perfect synchronization. 47 warships and their support vessels vanished from Earth's solar system, heading toward a war that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. In the communications center of his damaged ship, Ambassador received a simple message: the journey to space would take 2 weeks at maximum faster-than-light speed. Captain Mitchell used every hour to prepare his crew for what was coming. The UES Valiant was one of Earth's carriers, built in the orbital shipyards above Mars. It carried 80 fighters and 20 bombers, along with a crew of 3,000. The ship was massive by human standards, nearly a kilometer long, but knew it was small compared to the ancient vessels used by other galactic species. He stood in the hangar bay, watching maintenance crews work on the fighters. Chief Engineer Lisa Grant approached him, tablet in hand. She was a short woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, grease stains on her uniform from working on the engines. Captain, I've finished the modifications you requested, Lisa said. Every ship in the fleet now has triple redundancy on critical systems: life support, navigation, and weapons. If one system fails, 2 backups kick in automatically. Good, said. What about the armor? We've reinforced the hull with additional plating around crew sections. It adds weight and reduces speed by about 5%, but it'll give the crew a better chance if we take hits. Lisa paused. Sir, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why are we doing this? I mean, really. The official reason is strategic defense, but that's years away. We're risking everything now for people we don't even know. Looked at the fighters being prepped for combat. Young pilots, some barely out of training, checking their craft with serious faces. Because someone has to, he said simply. They asked for help. If we ignore that, if we let them die when we could have tried to save them, what does that make us? Lisa nodded slowly. I just hope we're ready. We won't be, admitted. You're never really ready for war, but we'll do our best, and sometimes that's enough. The next day, the Valiant received a visitor. A small shuttle requested permission to dock and granted it. He met the alien delegation in the main conference room. The who emerged from the shuttle was female, tall and elegant with silver skin that caught the light. She wore what looked like a military uniform, though the symbols were unfamiliar. Her large, dark eyes studied the humans with obvious curiosity. I am military liaison from the Defense Fleet, she said through the translation device on her collar. I have been sent to observe your preparations and provide tactical information about the... Gestured to a chair. Welcome aboard, I'm Captain Mitchell. This is my senior staff. He introduced Commander Kate, his tactical officer. Lieutenant Sophie Blake, Intelligence. Chief Engineer Lisa Grant. Medical Officer Greg Palmer, a quiet man with steady hands and calm eyes. And finally, Lieutenant Amy, who ran the ship's intelligence operations. Sat down, her movements graceful despite the slightly higher gravity of the human ship. I must admit, I am uncertain why the Council approved your involvement. Your ships appear primitive compared to standard galactic vessels. Primitive, Kate repeated, raising an eyebrow. Your weapons are primarily kinetic, said. Missiles, and you have limited energy weapons and no quantum disruptors. Your shields are electromagnetic rather than gravitational. Against this technology is centuries outdated. Maybe, said calmly, but old doesn't mean ineffective. Sometimes simple is better. Looked skeptical but said nothing. Over the next few days, Amy worked with to compile detailed information about The intelligence officer was a small woman with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. She had served in Earth's intelligence corps during the colony wars and knew how to extract useful information. Tell me about their tactics, Amy said, displaying a holographic battlefield. Manipulated the display, showing previous engagements. The fight in swarms. Thousands of small, each controlled by the central. They overwhelm defenses through sheer numbers and adapt their biology to resist whatever weapons are used against them. Adapt how fast? Amy asked. Within minutes of first exposure. If you use plasma weapons, they develop heat-resistant skin. If you use kinetic projectiles, they grow armor plating. Energy shields slow them down, but they eventually find the frequency to pass through. Amy frowned, making notes. So every species that's fought them used the same approach. Hit them with one type of weapon, watch it become ineffective, then lose. Essentially, yes. Good thing we don't fight like that, Amy said. She pulled up data on the human fleet's armaments. We have 17 different weapon types across the fleet. Missiles, lasers, plasma torpedoes, particle beams, graviton pulses, and some experimental systems we're still testing. We'll hit them with everything at once. Let's see them adapt to that. Studied the data with surprise. This is highly inefficient. Most species standardize their weapons for ease of supply and maintenance. Most species haven't spent their entire history fighting each other, Amy replied. Humans learned war the hard way. We use whatever works. In the medical bay, Greg Palmer was setting up field hospitals with a dedication that impressed even. The liaison watched as human medical teams organized supplies, trained for trauma response, and prepared for mass casualties. Why dedicate so much space to medical facilities? Asked. This reduces your combat effectiveness. Most warships have minimal medical staff. Greg looked up from the surgical unit he was calibrating. Because people are going to get hurt. Both our people and yours. We're not leaving them to die just to fit more guns on the ship. But in war, casualties are expected. The mission takes priority. Not for us, Greg said firmly. Every life matters. We'll fight with everything we have, but we'll also save everyone we can. That's not negotiable. found this concept strange but said nothing more. The human fleet maintained constant communication as they traveled. Admiral Carter held daily briefings with all ship captains, discussing tactics and sharing information. It was during one of these briefings that the full scope of humanity's approach became clear. "We're not going to fight the way everyone else has," Admiral Carter said. "We're going to hit them with chaos, unpredictable movements, mixed weapon types, irregular attack patterns. The aura, which means they think logically and adapt systematically. We're going to be illogical." "Respectfully, Admiral," said the captain of the destroyer UES Phoenix, "that sounds like a fancy way of saying we have no plan." "We have a plan," Carter replied with a slight smile. "The plan is to have no predictable plan. We'll organize into small groups of 3 to 5 ships. Each group operates independently, hitting the enemy where they're weak, retreating when necessary, never staying in one place long enough for them to adapt." Commander Kate spoke up from the Valiant. "Standard galactic doctrine uses formation warfare. Organized lines of battle, coordinated volleys, textbook maneuvers. They have faced that for centuries. They've never fought an enemy that deliberately avoids patterns." "Exactly," Carter said. "We're going to confuse them, frustrate them, and make them waste resources adapting to threats that keep changing. Meanwhile, we protect the civilians and infrastructure. This isn't about destroying it's about making them decide that fighting us costs more than it's worth." The briefing continued with tactical details, but the message was clear. Humanity would fight its own way, regardless of how the rest of the galaxy did things. Lieutenant Sophie Blake spent her time analyzing past battles, looking for any weakness. She worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination. On the 10th day of the journey, she found something. "Captain, I need to show you this," she said, bursting into his office. Looked up from the reports he was reading. "What is it?" Sophie activated a holographic display. "I've been studying every recorded engagement I could find. The swarm always wins through adaptation and numbers, but there's a pattern, a weakness." "Show me." "They adapt to threats based on what damages them most. If you hit them with plasma, they develop plasma resistance. But here's the thing. The adaptation takes time to spread through the entire swarm. Individuals adapt quickly, but distributing that adaptation across thousands of ships takes minutes. During that window, they're vulnerable." Leaned forward, "So if we keep switching weapons, they'll always be adapting to the last thing we used, not what we're currently using," Sophie finished. "We hit them with missiles, they adapt, we switch to, by the time they adapt to, we're using lasers. We stay one step ahead." "That requires incredible coordination," said. "Yes, sir, but we can do it. Human pilots are trained to improvise. We don't rely on rigid doctrine. Give them the freedom to switch tactics on the fly, and they'll run circles around that needs time to process changes." Smiled. "Good work, Lieutenant. Send this analysis to all ships. I want every captain to understand this." As the fleet approached space, the mood shifted from preparation to anticipation. Crews ran combat drills. Pilots practiced attack runs. Engineers checked every system twice, then checked again. In the fighter bay, young pilots gathered around their craft. These were men and women who had joined the Defense Force to protect Earth's colonies, never imagining they'd be fighting alien monsters to save a species they'd never met. One pilot, Lieutenant Ben Carter, sat in his cockpit running pre-flight checks. He was 24 years old, fresh-faced and nervous. His hands shook slightly as he went through the motions he'd practiced 1,000 times. His squadron leader, Commander Danny, tapped on the canopy. "You okay, Carter?" "Just nerves, sir," Ben admitted. "Good, if you weren't nervous, I'd be worried." Danny leaned against the fighter. "Listen, I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be bad. We're going up against an enemy that's destroyed civilizations. Some of us won't come back." Ben swallowed hard. "Then why are we doing this?" "Because someone has to, because they are counting on us, because if we don't stand up to evil when we have the chance, we're no better than the monsters we're fighting." Danny straightened up. "You're going to be scared out there. We all will be. But remember your training, trust your, and fight like hell. That's all anyone can ask." Ben nodded, feeling slightly better. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of space. Ahead of them lay a sector of stars, beautiful and peaceful in the darkness. But everyone knew that beauty was deceptive. Somewhere in that darkness, the swarm was hunting. Admiral Carter's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships, this is Carter. We've arrived. From this point forward, we're on combat status. Remember what we're here for. Remember who we're protecting. You are the United Earth Defense Force, and today we show the galaxy what humanity stands for. Good luck to all of you. The fleet formed up and began moving deeper into territory. Every sensor was active, scanning for threats. Every weapons system was powered up and ready. On the bridge of the Valiant, stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the stars. Stood nearby, observing the humans with an expression that might have been respect. The distress signal came from a frontier colony. The transmission was broken and filled with static, but the message was clear. The had arrived. All hands to battle stations, Captain Mitchell ordered. Launch all fighters, prepare for combat. Throughout the UES Valiant, alarms blared. Crews rushed to their positions. In the hangar bay, Lieutenant Ben Carter climbed into his fighter, his earlier nervousness replaced by focused determination. Around him, 79 other pilots did the same. The human fleet accelerated toward at maximum speed. As they got closer, the sensors began picking up the battle. It was already going badly for the visual on the main display, Commander Kate said. The screen showed a scene from a nightmare. The colony world of hung in space, its orbital platforms surrounded by thousands of black shapes. They looked like insects, each one the size of a fighter craft, moving in perfect coordination. They swarmed around the defense stations like ants on food, tearing through shields and armor with biological weapons. Ships fought desperately, their energy weapons cutting through dozens of with each shot. But for every destroyed, 10 more took its place. The defenders were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Count asked. Estimating 4,000, Lieutenant Amy reported. 3 cruisers and 12 defense platforms still operational. They're losing ground fast. Stood on the bridge, her face pale. They will not last another hour. Then we better make this count, said. He opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Mitchell. Execute attack plan Chaos 1. Formations, hit them from multiple angles. Keep moving, keep switching weapons, and don't give them time to adapt. Protect those platforms, move out. The human fleet split into 9 groups of 5 ships each, spreading out in a wide arc. It looked disorganized, nothing like the neat battle lines used by galactic militaries. The swarm noticed the new arrivals and began to redirect forces to meet them. Commander Kate led the first, consisting of 3 destroyers and 2 frigates. They came in fast from the flank, already firing. Solid metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds tore through the formation, each impact destroying in clusters. The swarm adapted quickly. Within seconds, the damaged were transmitting information to the whole hive. New approaching the human formation had thicker armor designed to resist kinetic impacts. Kate saw this on her sensors and smiled. Switch to missiles, fire at will. Hundreds of missiles launched from the human ships, weaving through space on unpredictable paths. The expecting more fire were caught off guard. Explosions bloomed across their formation as missiles found targets. By the time the swarm adapted to missiles, Kate's had switched to laser fire, then particle beams, then back to. They were constantly playing catch-up, adapting to weapons that were no longer being used. They hate this, Kate said with satisfaction. Keep cycling weapons, don't use the same thing twice in a row. Across the battlefield, the other human were doing the same thing. The organized swarm found itself fighting an enemy that refused to be predictable. Human ships darted in and out of combat range, striking fast and retreating before the swarm could respond effectively. In his fighter, Lieutenant Ben Carter led his squadron through the chaos. The young pilot had trained for combat in simulation, but nothing had prepared him for the real thing. Filled his, moving with insect-like precision. Alpha Squadron, follow my lead, Commander Danny ordered. Attack pattern random 7, go. The human fighters scattered, each pilot choosing their own approach vector. It looked like chaos, and it was impossible to predict. The swarm tried to organize a defensive formation, but human pilots kept changing their tactics. Ben locked onto a cluster of and fired his missiles. 3 exploded. He immediately rolled his fighter to the left, avoiding return fire from 2 more that had adapted to his position. His training took over. He switched to his cannon and sprayed fire across the enemy formation, then dove toward the planet, using its gravity to slingshot around and come up behind another group. This is insane, His said over the radio, laughing despite the danger. But it's working. It was working. The used to fighting organized formations could not handle the unpredictable aggression of human pilots. Each fighter was essentially independent, making split-second decisions that no central intelligence could predict. They could adapt to patterns, but humans were deliberately avoiding patterns. On the Valiant watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. The human fleet was outnumbered 10-1, but they were holding their own. More importantly, they had taken pressure off the defenders. "Status on the orbital platforms?" he asked. "Platform 7 is down," Amy reported, "but the others are stabilizing, they are rallying." Indeed, the ships had noticed the human tactics and were starting to adapt their own approach. Instead of maintaining rigid formations, they began supporting the human, adding their powerful energy weapons to the chaotic assault. But they were not finished. The swarm began to change tactics. Instead of trying to adapt to every human weapon, they started focusing on overwhelming individual ships through sheer numbers. "Captain, the destroyers Phoenix and Guardian are getting swarmed," Kate reported. "They're taking heavy damage." "Medical teams prepare for casualties," ordered. He opened a channel. "Phoenix, Guardian fall back, all nearby ships cover their retreat." But the captain of the Phoenix had other ideas. "Negative, Valiant, we're not running." Captain Stone's voice was calm despite the situation. "All power to forward shields, we're going in." "Phoenix, that's suicide," Kate said. "Maybe, but it'll give the platforms time to fire. Phoenix out." The destroyer Phoenix charged directly into the thickest part of the swarm. Swarmed over it like flies, their biological weapons tearing at the hull. But the Phoenix kept firing, its weapons cutting through enemies even as its own armor failed. The sacrifice bought crucial seconds. The platforms, given breathing room, coordinated a devastating volley of plasma fire that carved a hole in the swarm. The Phoenix emerged from the other side, battered and trailing atmosphere but still functional. "Damage reports," demanded. "Hull breaches on 7 decks, came the response from the Phoenix. "Life support failing in sections 2 through 5, but we're still flying and we're still fighting." "Medical ship Georgia, get to the Phoenix now," ordered. "Prepare for emergency evacuations." The hospital ship moved toward the damaged destroyer, protected by 2 frigates. This was another thing that confused the. Why would humans risk additional ships to save a damaged one? They had no concept of valuing individual members. Chief Medical Officer Greg Palmer was already in the medical bay, preparing for wounded. The first casualties arrived within minutes. A young engineer with burns across his arms, a navigator with a broken leg from being thrown against her console, a weapons officer who had been near a hull breach and suffered decompression injuries. Greg moved between patients with practiced efficiency, his calm voice directing the medical team. "Get her on oxygen. I need a dermal regenerator here. Prep Surgery Bay 2 for that leg." More wounded arrived, not just from the Phoenix, but from other ships taking damage. Greg worked without stopping, his hands steady as he treated injury after injury. Around him, nurses and doctors did the same. No one complained, no one hesitated. This was what they had signed up for. On the bridge, saw a new problem developing. A group had broken away from the main battle and were heading toward the planet's surface. "They're going after the civilian population," said, her voice tight with fear. "Not on my watch," said. "All fighters new priority. Intercept those before they reach the planet. Do not let them through." Lieutenant Ben Carter heard the order and felt his stomach drop. The heading for the planet numbered in the hundreds. His squadron had maybe 20 fighters in range. "Alpha Squadron, form up on me," Commander Danny ordered. "We're stopping them here." The human fighters positioned themselves between thee and the planet. It was a desperate move. They were hopelessly outnumbered, but they did not retreat. Ben armed every weapon his fighter had, missiles, cannons, even the emergency plasma charges. He picked his first target and fired. The exploded. He picked another explosion. Around him, his squadron mates did the same. But there were too many. The swarm kept coming, accepting losses because they knew they had the numbers to win. Then help arrived from an unexpected source. Civilian ships, the ones meant for evacuation, rose from the planet. They were not warships. They were transports, mining vessels, even personal shuttles. But they were armed with whatever weapons their crews could jury-rig, and they flew directly into the formation. For our children, a voice said over the open channel. For our world. The civilians had no training, no coordination, no chance. But they bought time. Precious seconds for the human fighters to destroy more. Precious seconds for reinforcements to arrive. Commander Kate brought her screaming in at maximum speed. Her ships opened fire with everything they had, cutting through the like a knife. Get away from that planet, she snarled. The combined force of human fighters, Kate's ships, and desperate civilians managed to break the assault on the planet. Taking unsustainable losses back to the main swarm. But the cost was heavy. Half of the civilian ships were destroyed. 3 human fighters did not return, and across the fleet, damaged ships struggled to maintain function. Captain, they are pulling back, Amy reported with surprise in her voice. Could hardly believe it. The swarm, which had never retreated from battle in recorded history, was withdrawing from. They left behind the wreckage of hundreds of destroyed, but the colony was saved. All ships hold position, ordered. Do not pursue, secure the area and begin rescue operations. As the human fleet regrouped, stared at the tactical display in disbelief. They retreated. They actually retreated. In 500 years of conflict, no one has ever made them withdraw. We made it too expensive, said quietly. They're used to easy victories. We showed them that attacking us costs more than it gains. Admiral Carter's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships well done, damage reports. The reports came in. Every ship had taken hits. The Phoenix was barely functional. 2 destroyers had lost main weapons. Multiple fighters were damaged, and there were casualties, 37 dead, over 100 wounded. But they had won. The colony was safe. The platform still stood, and for the first time in centuries, the swarm had been forced to retreat. In the medical bay, Greg Palmer finally allowed himself a moment to rest. Around him, the wounded were being treated. Some would recover fully. Others would carry scars for the rest of their lives. But they were alive, and that was what mattered. A young civilian, rescued from one of the damaged ships, approached Greg. Why did you save us? You are not our people. Greg looked at the alien, seeing the confusion in those large, dark eyes. Because you needed help. That's all the reason we need. On the bridge, Ambassador's face appeared on the communication screen. The leader news of the victory had spread through the Galactic Council faster than light-speed transmissions could carry it. Within days, every major species in the galaxy had heard the impossible story. Humans, the newcomers from a primitive, had forced the swarm to retreat. Most refused to believe it. The council chambers on Arcturus Prime filled with representatives from dozens of species. They came to debate, to question, and to demand answers. How could a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel defeat an enemy that had destroyed civilizations thousands of years old? Council Observer, a tall being with crystalline skin and multiple eyes, stood before the assembly. I propose we send an investigation team to verify these claims. The reports from the may be exaggerated. The reports are accurate, Ambassador said firmly. I witnessed the battle myself. The humans fought with tactics we have never seen. They saved my people. Tactics alone do not explain this, another council member argued. They have adapted to every known combat strategy. What could these humans possibly do differently? Perhaps we should ask them directly, suggested. I volunteer to lead the observation team. The council agreed. Within a week, arrived at the human fleet's position aboard a council ship, accompanied by military analysts from 3 other species. They came expecting to find the reports exaggerated, ready to dismiss human capabilities as lucky chance. Admiral Helen Carter met them personally aboard the UES Valiant. She was straightforward and professional, showing no concern about their skepticism. Observer, welcome aboard, she said. I understand you're here to evaluate our capabilities. Indeed, the Council finds it difficult to believe that a species as young as yours could succeed where others have failed. Multiple eyes studied her. No offense intended. None taken, Carter replied. Feel free to inspect whatever you wish. We have nothing to hide. Captain Mitchell will give you full access to our ships and personnel. This transparency surprised. Most species guarded their military secrets carefully, yet the humans were offering unrestricted access. Over the next few days, the observation team examined every aspect of the human fleet. They studied the ships, interviewed the crew, and observed training exercises. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. In the engineering section, Chief Lisa Grant showed them the damage control systems. "This is why our ships survive hits that would destroy yours," she explained. "Every critical system has 3 backups. If the main reactor fails, we have 2 more. If those fail, we have emergency batteries. We design our ships to be beaten up and keep fighting." One of the analysts, an insect-like being named, examined the systems with skepticism. "This redundancy is inefficient. It reduces your overall power output and speed." "By about 15%, Lisa agreed. "But it means we can take damage and survive. Your ships might be faster and hit harder, but one good hit to the reactor and you're done. We can lose half our systems and still make it home." On the training deck, Commander Kate was running combat simulations with officers. The observation team watched as she taught them human tactics. "Forget everything you know about formation warfare," Kate told the students. "Stop thinking about organized battle lines. You need to think like a pack of wolves. Independent, aggressive, unpredictable." She ran the simulation. The officers tried to maintain formation, moving in coordinated patterns. The simulation swarm adapted quickly and destroyed them. "See the problem?" Kate asked. "You're predictable, that can calculate your next move because you follow doctrine. Now watch." She ran the simulation again, this time with human pilots. The fighters scattered in what looked like chaos, each one taking a different approach. They switched weapons constantly, never using the same tactic twice. The simulation could not adapt fast enough, and the humans won decisively. "But this is disorganized," one officer protested. "How do you coordinate without structure?" "We trust our people to make good decisions," Kate explained. "Every pilot knows the objective. How they achieve it is up to them. This requires better training and more individual skill, but it makes us unpredictable." Found this concept disturbing. His species, like most in the galaxy, believed in centralized command and rigid doctrine. The idea of soldiers making independent tactical decisions seemed dangerous. But he could not argue with the results. In the medical bay, the observers found something even more puzzling. Dr. Greg Palmer was treating wounded from the Battle of. The bay was filled with injured personnel, both human and receiving equal care. "This medical facility is enormous," observed. "You have dedicated 3 entire decks to medical services. This space could hold additional weapons or troops." "It could," Greg agreed, not looking up from the patient he was treating. "But saving lives is more important than extra weapons." "An interesting philosophy, but does it not reduce your combat effectiveness?" "In the short term, maybe," Greg said. "But our people fight harder knowing that if they're wounded, we'll move heaven and earth to save them. Morale matters, trust matters. You can't put a weapon's value on that." He finished treating the and moved to a human soldier with burns on her hands. "Besides, we're not just treating our own people. We're here to help that means all of them, not just the soldiers." One of the analysts, a floating orb-like being named Theta, asked permission to interview lower-ranking crew members. Carter agreed immediately, which surprised Theta. Most commanders would want to control the narrative. Theta spoke with dozens of humans. Engineers, pilots, medics, cooks, maintenance workers. Every one of them said essentially the same thing. They were here because it was the right thing to do. They were risking their lives for people they had never met because those people needed help. "Do you not fear death?" Theta asked a young pilot. Lieutenant Ben Carter thought about it. "Sure, I'm scared, but being scared isn't a reason not to do what's right. They are facing extinction. If we can help stop that, the risk is worth it." "Your species is strange," Theta observed. "Maybe," Ben said with a smile, "but we're here, aren't we?" On the 5th day of the observation, Lieutenant Amy briefed the team on human intelligence operations. She showed them how humanity had analyzed every recorded battle, identifying patterns and weaknesses that others had missed. "The key to beating thee is understanding how they think," Amy explained. They process information logically and adapt systematically. This makes them predictable if you know what to look for." She displayed a tactical map. Every species that fought them used similar strategies: energy weapons, defensive formations, wars of attrition. They adapted to this because it was consistent. We use inconsistency as a weapon. "This seems overly simplistic," said. "Surely they have encountered irregular tactics before." Not like ours, Amy replied. Other species might vary their tactics within established doctrine. We throw out doctrine entirely. Human warfare evolved on a planet where we fought each other for thousands of years. Every terrain, every environment, every possible scenario. We learned to be creative because our enemies were just as smart as us. They have never faced that. The observation team spent days analyzing human tactics, technology, and philosophy. Despite their initial skepticism, they could not deny what they were seeing. Humanity fought differently because they thought differently. But the real test came when Admiral Carter invited them to a fleet briefing. The Admiral was planning the next operation, and she wanted the observers to see how humans made strategic decisions. The briefing room filled with ship captains and senior officers. Carter stood at the front, displaying a star map. Intelligence indicates they are preparing a major offensive, she said. 3 targets: the mining colony at Praxis, the agricultural world of, and the orbital stations around. They're going to hit all 3 simultaneously. The room went quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. The fleet would have to split up to defend all 3 locations. Admiral, Captain Mitchell said carefully, if we divide the fleet, we'll be outnumbered at each location. Standard doctrine would be to concentrate our forces at the most valuable target and sacrifice the others. Standard doctrine can go to hell, Carter said bluntly. We didn't come here to make strategic calculations about which are worth saving. We came to protect them all. Stood up, Admiral Carter, this is madness. You will lose ships. You will lose people. The logical choice is to defend the most critical location. Carter turned to face him. Observer, your species has been fighting for how long? 300 years, replied. And in that time, how many worlds have you saved? Hesitated, we have managed to slow their expansion. That's not what I asked. How many worlds have you saved? The crystalline being said nothing. Carter looked around the room. We've been in this fight for 2 weeks and we've already saved 1 world. You know why? Because we refuse to accept that some people aren't worth saving. Because we believe every life matters. Because we're willing to take risks that your logical calculations say we shouldn't take. She turned back to the star map. We're splitting the fleet into 3 battle groups. Each group will defend 1 target. Yes, we'll be outnumbered. Yes, it's risky. But that's the human way. We don't abandon people just because the math doesn't work out. The captains began discussing the plan, working out details and coordinating tactics. Not one of them argued against protecting all 3 locations. They accepted the risk as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Watched this with a growing sense of unease. These humans were either the bravest species he had ever encountered or the most foolish, possibly both. After the briefing, he approached Admiral Carter privately. Your people are going to die because of this decision, he said bluntly. Some of them, yes, Carter agreed. War has costs, but if we let innocent people die just to keep our own casualties low, what does that make us? What's the point of having power if we don't use it to protect others? The Galactic Council protects species through strategic planning and calculated risk. Your approach is emotional and reckless. Carter smiled slightly. Maybe, but your strategic planning let them consume 12 worlds while you debated what to do. We've been here 2 weeks and already changed the situation. I'll take emotional and reckless over cautious and ineffective any day. She started to walk away, then paused. Observer, I understand your concern. Your species has been around for thousands of years. You've developed sophisticated methods for everything. But sometimes the simple answer is the right one. Someone needs help. We help them. It's not complicated. The next day, the 3 human battle groups departed for their assigned targets. Each consisted of 15 to 20 ships, facing an enemy that would outnumber them by at least 5 to 1. And the other observers remained on the Valiant with Admiral Carter, who coordinated the overall defense from the command center. They watched on the tactical displays as the battle groups reached their destinations, and they appeared in overwhelming force. They are going to be destroyed, said quietly. Maybe, Carter replied, or maybe they'll pull off another miracle. That's what humans do. The 3 battles began within minutes of each other, and from the start, everything went wrong. At the mining colony of, Commander Kate watched her sensors light up with enemy contacts. 5,000 emerged from faster-than-light travel in a perfect swarm formation. Her battle group had 18 ships. Well, this is going to be interesting, she muttered. All ships execute pattern Delta 7. Let's make them earn this. Her destroyers and frigates scattered immediately, refusing to present a unified target. The expecting organized resistance found themselves chasing ships that moved in deliberately chaotic patterns. Kate's flagship took the first hits, slammed into her shields, their biological weapons eating through the electromagnetic barriers faster than she expected. Divert power from secondary systems to shields, switch weapons to graviton pulses. The new weapon caught the off guard. Purple beams of distorted gravity tore through that had adapted to resist conventional weapons. But within minutes, the swarm began developing resistance even to that. "They're adapting," her tactical officer reported. "Good, that means they're focused on us and not the colony." Kate switched to missiles. "All ships protect the mining platforms, we keep them busy." At the agricultural world of, Captain Mitchell faced an even worse situation. 6,000 against his 20 ships. The odds were absurd and his crew knew it. But they did not run. "Set course directly into the swarm," ordered. His crew looked at him in shock. "Sir," his navigation officer asked. "You heard me, take us right down their throats. They expect us to fight defensively. Let's show them what happens when humans go on the attack." The UES Valiant, damaged from the previous battle but still operational, charged straight into the formation. Every weapon fired at once. Missiles, lasers, plasma torpedoes, all hitting the enemy at point-blank range. The caught completely off guard by the suicidal charge took devastating losses, but they recovered quickly, swarming over the human ships like angry insects. Ship shook as bioweapons tore into the hull. Damage report. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7, Chief Engineer Lisa Grant reported from engineering. "Main reactor at 80%. We're holding together, but barely." "Keep us fighting," said. "That's all I ask." At the orbital stations around Praxis, Lieutenant Sophie Blake commanded a smaller force of just 15 ships. She faced 4,000 and a tactical nightmare. The stations were full of civilians being evacuated, and they could not maneuver or defend themselves. "We need to create a defensive perimeter," Sophie said. "Form a wall between the stations and the swarm. Nothing gets through." Her ships positioned themselves in a line, shields overlapping to create a barrier. It was the kind of static defense that usually failed against but Sophie was gambling that she could make it work through sheer determination. They hit the human line like a tidal wave, crashed against shields, weapons tearing at armor, trying to break through to the helpless stations behind. "Shields at 60%, her tactical officer reported. 50%, we can't hold this." "We don't have to hold forever," Sophie said. "Just long enough for the evacuations to complete. Keep fighting." On the Valiant's command center, Admiral Carter and the Galactic Council observers watched all 3 battles simultaneously on the tactical displays. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Human ships were taking severe damage at all 3 locations. "They need to retreat," said urgently. "Admiral, recall your forces before they are destroyed." Carter's jaw tightened. "No. This is madness. You are sacrificing your people for nothing." "For nothing?" Carter turned to face him. "Those are civilians down there, families, children, they're not nothing." "I did not mean it that way," said quickly. "But the strategic reality is that you cannot win these battles. Withdrawal now would save your ships to fight another day." "We're not here to save ships," Carter said. "We're here to save people." At Kate's battle group was being torn apart. 3 of her ships were already destroyed, their crews killed in seconds as they overwhelmed their defenses. 2 more were critically damaged and limping away from the fight. But the mining platforms were still intact, and the workers were still alive. Kate's own ship had lost main power. Emergency systems kept life support and minimal weapons online, but they were running on borrowed time. "Captain, we have to abandon ship," her first officer said. "No," Kate replied. "We just need to hold a little longer." "For what?" Kate checked her chronometer. "You'll see." At's ship was in even worse shape. The Valiant had taken damage that should have destroyed it 3 times over. The bridge was filled with smoke. Half the crew was dead or wounded. The ship was barely holding together. But they were still fighting. Medical Officer Greg Palmer worked in the medical bay, treating wounded as fast as they arrived. The casualties were overwhelming. Burns, broken bones, decompression injuries, radiation exposure. He moved from patient to patient, saving who he could, comforting those he could not. A young engineer died on his table despite everything Greg tried. He felt the familiar weight of failure, the helplessness of losing someone he was supposed to save. But he did not stop. There were others who still needed him. At Praxis, Sophie's defensive line was collapsing. 2 ships had been destroyed trying to protect the stations. The survivors were battered and barely functional, but the evacuations were almost complete. "Last transport is away," her communications officer reported. "All civilians are clear." Sophie felt relief flood through her. "All ships prepare to withdraw." Then her sensors picked up something new. They were launching a final massive assault, throwing everything they had at the human line in one overwhelming push. "They're trying to destroy us before we can escape," her tactical officer said. Sophie calculated angles and distances. They would reach them before they could jump to faster-than-light speed. Her ships were too damaged to fight off that many enemies. She made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "All ships except the flagship jump to safety now," she ordered. "Lieutenant, what about you?" a captain asked. "I'm buying you time. Go, that's an order." Her ship, the destroyer UES Defiant, turned to face the oncoming swarm alone. Sophie armed every weapon she had left, including overloading the reactor to create one final devastating explosion. "This is Lieutenant Sophie Blake to Admiral Carter," she said calmly. "Civilian evacuation successful, all other ships clear. It's been an honor, ma'am." Before Carter could respond, the Defiant charged into the swarm. Sophie fired everything, destroying hundreds in the last seconds before the reactor overloaded. The explosion was visible from orbit. A small star blooming in the darkness, taking thousands with it and scattering the rest of the swarm in confusion. Sophie Blake died saving people she had never met. She was 23 years old. On the command center, Admiral Carter stood in silence, her hand gripping the edge of the tactical display. Around her, the observers said nothing. There were no words adequate for what they had just witnessed. Then something unexpected happened. Earth's reserve fleet arrived. Admiral Carter had kept one final card in reserve. Every vessel that Earth could mobilize, even converted civilian ships, had been prepared and sent as backup. 50 additional ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel simultaneously at all 3 battle locations. The reinforcements were not all military vessels. Some were cargo ships with hastily installed weapons. Others were mining ships, their industrial tools converted into crude but effective weapons. Even a few private yachts had been armed and crewed by volunteers. But they were there, and they were angry. Kate watched in amazement as the reinforcements tore into the swarm. Fresh ships with full weapons and shields turned the tide in seconds. "All damaged ships fall back," Admiral Carter's voice came over the fleet channel. "Reserve forces engage the enemy. Show them what happens when you threaten humanity's friends." The reserve fleet fought with wild aggression. These were crews who had heard about the battles, who knew friends and family were dying out here. They hit with everything they had. At's battered Valiant finally got relief as new ships took over the fight. He slumped in his chair, exhausted beyond words. "Get the wounded to the medical ships," he ordered. "Damage control teams, do what you can to keep us together." Lisa Grant appeared on his screen from engineering. Her face was covered in soot and blood, but she was smiling. "We're still flying, Captain, still fighting." "Good work, Chief. Take 5 minutes to breathe, then get back to it." The tide of all 3 battles turned within minutes. Faced with fresh human forces and taking unsustainable casualties, made a decision that shocked everyone watching. They retreated. Not just from one battle, but from all 3. The entire offensive collapsed as the swarm from space entirely, leaving behind thousands of destroyed and the wreckage of the battles. In the command center, observers stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. "They are retreating. The swarm is retreating from an entire sector." "That's never happened before," added. "In 500 years of conflict, they have never abandoned a campaign." Admiral Carter allowed herself a small smile. Maybe they finally learned that some fights cost too much. But the victory came at a terrible price. The human fleet had lost 18 ships destroyed and 23 more heavily damaged. Casualties numbered in the thousands. Among the dead was Lieutenant Sophie Blake, who had sacrificed herself to save civilians. Carter sent orders to gather the fleet at Prime for repairs and to honor the fallen. 3 days later, a memorial service was held on the planet's surface. Thousands attended, humans, and stood together, mourning their dead and celebrating their survival. Admiral Carter stood before the assembled crowd and read the names of every human who had died in the fighting. Each name was followed by a moment of silence. When she read Sophie Blake's name, several civilians stepped forward. "This human saved our lives," one of them said. "She gave her life so that we could live. We will never forget her." Ambassador spoke next, addressing the humans directly. "You came to us when we had nothing to offer but our gratitude. You fought for us when you had no obligation to do so. You died protecting people you did not know. There are no words sufficient to express what this means to the people." Observer stood and asked for permission to speak. Carter nodded. "I came here to evaluate human capabilities," said. "I expected to find the reports exaggerated. Instead, I found something I did not expect." He paused. "I found hope. For centuries, the Galactic Council has fought through calculation and strategy. We made decisions based on logic and acceptable losses. We failed because we forgot what we were fighting for." He looked at the humans. "You reminded us. You showed us that some things matter more than tactical advantage, that protecting the innocent is worth any risk, that courage and compassion are not weaknesses but strengths." Carter approached. "Observer, what humanity did here, we want this to be normal, not exceptional. We want a galaxy where species help each other, where the strong protect the weak not because it's strategic, but because it's right." Was quiet for a moment. "The Council will hear of this. Things will change. They must change." In the weeks that followed, human engineers worked alongside technicians to rebuild damaged worlds. Medical teams treated the wounded. Supply ships brought food and materials to colonies that had lost everything. The galaxy watched, and the galaxy learned. Other species began to question their own approaches to the threat. If humans could succeed with inferior technology and smaller numbers, perhaps the problem was not the enemy, but the methods being used to fight them. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in their long history, they invited human representatives to address the assembly. Admiral Carter stood before species that were thousands of years older than humanity and spoke simple truth. "We did not come to your galaxy to conquer or to take. We came because someone needed help. That should be reason enough for anyone. They are strong, but they can be beaten. Not through superior weapons or advanced technology, but through determination and the refusal to abandon those who cannot defend themselves." She paused, looking around the vast chamber. "Humanity offers the Council a partnership. We will share our tactics, train your forces, fight alongside you. Not for territory or resources. We want a galaxy where species stand together against threats, where compassion and courage guide decisions, where every life matters." The Council debated for hours. Some species were skeptical, others were intrigued, but the evidence was undeniable. Humanity had accomplished what was thought impossible. The final vote was close, but it passed. The Council would adopt new strategies based on human methods. Joint training operations would begin. The fight against the would continue, but now with new hope. Months later, Captain Mitchell stood on the observation deck of the repaired Valiant, looking at the stars. The ship was heading home to Earth, its mission complete. Around him, his crew relaxed, finally allowing themselves to believe they had survived. Commander Kate joined him. "Think we made a difference?" she asked. Thought about Lieutenant Sophie Blake and all the others who had not made it home. He thought about the civilians who were alive because humans had refused to abandon them. He thought about the changes beginning to sweep through the Galactic Council. "Yes," he said, "we made a difference. We showed them what humanity stands for. Maybe we shattered more than just the... Maybe we shattered the old ways of thinking. Maybe the galaxy will be better for it." The Valiant and her escort ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, beginning the long journey home. Behind them, they left a changed galaxy and the memory of a fleet that had shattered expectations, shattered conventions, and perhaps shattered the very idea of what was possible when courage met compassion. The observers watched in silence as 3 desperate battles began simultaneously across space. Every instinct told them this was a disaster in the making. The humans should have concentrated their forces, should have made the hard choice to save what they could. But as the battle developed, something unexpected happened. The humans outnumbered and did not break. They fought with a ferocity and determination that logic, and slowly, impossibly, they began to hold their ground. Stared at the displays, his multiple eyes wide. This should not be possible. "Welcome to humanity," Admiral Carter said quietly. "We specialize in the impossible." Looked exhausted but hopeful. "Captain Mitchell, on behalf of all, I thank you. You have done what we thought impossible." "Don't thank me yet," said. "This was just one battle, though we'll be back, and next time they'll be adapted to our tactics." "Then what do we do?" Smiled slightly. "We adapt faster than they do. That's the human way." "Your people are brave," she said quietly. "Foolish perhaps, but brave." "We'll see," replied. "The test is coming." From Earth. "Help is coming, hold on." For the first time in months, the ambassador allowed himself to hope.